we are going to be continuing our deep dive into the weapons of the Turok series with the sequel, Seeds of Evil. Again, I will be ranking them based on their overall performance and generally how fun they are to use. Like before, this list is based on the Nightdive remasters, which are better overall for the experience. Now with all that said, let's get to it. Starting off at number 24, the Flare. Well, not even a weapon, it still takes up a slot, so we're going to include it. I'll be very brief with this one though. It lights up an area for a time. That's it. About the only thing going for the Flare is that Nightdive buffed its duration, so yay I guess? Moving on. At number 23, the Harpoon Gun. Outside of Lair of the Blind Ones, underwater combat is not something you're going to come across much in Turok 2. This thing feels like a cross between the wood bow and the tech bow in that it can reach its maximum speed and distance without holding the fire button or needing a scope. Being able to retrieve spent ammunition is nice, but when you're only fighting leapers and raptoids underwater, a quick swipe with the warblade is all you really need to deal with them. At number 22, the Tranquilizer Gun. I'm all for weapons designed to incapacitate rather than kill when the need arises, but Seeds of Evil is not a stealth game. It takes multiple shots to put down the common entrail only for them to awaken from the effect a short time later. And unless we're trying to round up some dinosaurs to put them on exhibit somewhere, I'd rather just take care of them the old-fashioned way and be done with it. Playing on higher difficulties, especially hardcore, you're going to run into encounters where it's better to either run past enemies or stun them in some way. As it stands, the tranquilizer just doesn't perform well enough to save you in those types of situations. At number 21, we have the Sunfire Pod. Functioning like primitive flashbang grenades, only with less bang and more flash, these serve as another means to incapacitate your enemies for a brief period. They cover a respectable area and have the added benefit of giving blind ones a lethal sunburn. The downside is that only direct hits work on them, and even that can be inconsistent at times. It's effective at what it does, but you'll likely forget about them once you leave the level. Now at number 20, the Talon. Your starting melee weapon, and one that will likely sit unused for the entire game if I'm being honest. This thing is slow, weighty, unless you land headshots it hits about as hard as a dull butter knife. Then consider the lack of the mortal wound mechanic from Dinosaur Hunter, it just feels like a direct downgrade from the knife. Not to mention with the ammo spawners found throughout each level, you never really have need for a dedicated melee option. If we are to believe that the Talon came from a fallen raptor, then Turok should have visited a taxidermist instead of turning it into a weapon. At least then it would have been a nice trophy for his wall. At number 19, the Torpedo Launcher. Let's be real, the water tunnels and Lair of the Blind Ones sucked in the original version of Seeds of Evil. So when Nightdive decided to put this weapon right at the start, it made navigating underwater less of a nightmare, along with the revamped layout of the map. It's more for utility than for clearing out enemies, which is a welcome addition. With only 3 maximum shots, you don't want to go around spamming it or you'll lose your speed increase. Ideally, you would use the boost from the torpedo launcher to dodge enemies underwater while reserving your shots for when they happen to block you. At number 18, the Razorwind. Alright, I wanted to rank this weapon higher simply because it's so damn cool, but I would be negligent not to take into account its one major flaw, the return speed. While the Razorwind can inflict some really high damage, you have to first consider the delay before it leaves your hand. Without adjusting your aim properly, it can and will harmlessly whiz by an enemy's head, leaving you to stand around like you're trying to tame a raptor.
Stand down. Hey! What did I just say?
If it does manage to kill something, just pray it doesn't get caught on the environment somewhere. Which unfortunately for the Razorwind, the level you acquire it in is full of very tight spaces where this can happen quite frequently. At number 17, the Warblade. While I can appreciate what they were going for with this weapon, having an upgrade to the Talon isn't going to be a game changer in the long run. It's still slow but deals damage in a broader arc and can effectively lop off some heads. When you want to conserve ammo, a quick swap to the Warblade can take care of anything that's breathing down your neck. Just don't rely on it for anything other than that. At number 16, the pistol. This basic firearm has largely remained unchanged from its predecessor found in Dinosaur Hunter. With the introduction to locational damage in Seeds of Evil, however, shots from the pistol will likely cause an enemy to flinch more often than not. This can be quite annoying at times, as the game seems to favor this behavior rather than have it register as a headshot. Still, the fire rate of the pistol along with plenty of ammo make it decent enough for a first weapon pickup. At number 15, the bow. Although shining arrows were removed from Turok 2, a well-placed headshot with the wood bow is more than sufficient to score a kill. It outperforms the pistol in this regard, which is something you desperately need in higher difficulties. Problem is, the bow takes a bit more skill to use due to its limited range and heavy arc that can often cause your shots to miss their mark. Thankfully, there is an upgrade for it later in Port of Audio, but until you do, you'll have to steady your aim and be sure to retrieve spent arrows. Next at number 14, the Tech Bow. The first weapon upgrade in the game, which also comes equipped with a scope for sniping as well as access to alternate ammo. The unique feature of the Tech Bow is that it eliminates the need to draw the bowstring fully to achieve max distance if you make use of the scope. You can retrieve spent arrows just the same, and the quality of life feature of being able to swap ammo types allows you to prioritize where to use them efficiently. It's a well-rounded package, but ultimately suffers from a number of flaws that keep it from reaching higher on the list. That being the drop-off on arrows at long range creates some problems with sniping, often alerting enemies if you miss your shot. Then there's the delay on tech arrows before they explode, leaving you vulnerable for a brief period. Overall though, as the name implies, I really think they achieve the sci-fi aesthetics of the Tech Bow quite nicely. Now at number 13, the Plasma Rifle. Your second sniper weapon, and one that will serve you well when you need pinpoint accuracy. In a direct assault where aiming becomes an issue with enemies moving around, it has rather subpar performance. It will likely graze their shoulder or limbs, wasting precious ammo and leaving you defenseless with its slow fire rate. But when you hang back and use the scope, the Plasma Rifle excels at taking down even the tankiest of enemies with some well-placed headshots. Next at number 12, the Nuke. Well, this is awkward. How did a super weapon end up here on the list? While it's certainly no fault of its own, the Nuke fails to meet expectations as your reward for collecting all the pieces throughout the game. The damage output is still absurdly high, as is the coverage from the blast radius, but the problem lies with boss encounters. Turok 2 went beyond the simple approach of just shoot it until it dies for its bosses by requiring the player to target specific weak points in order to deal damage. This leads to multi-stage fights where your aim is crucial. With that in mind, the Nuke just doesn't perform well enough in your battle against the Primogen unless you time things perfectly. But even then, all you're accomplishing is damaging a single weak point, something that other weapons can already manage on their own. Now at number 11, the PFM Layer. A sophisticated weapon for the strategist in mind, the Proximity Fragmentation Mine Layer seems like a useless accessory to a simple concept. While GoldenEye had James Bond capable of yeeting compact explosives onto solid surfaces, Turok 2 gives us a bulky piece of hardware to take care of what is essentially the same task. Criticisms aside, the PFM still earns its place as a weapon capable of some impressive firepower when used correctly. To really get the best out of the mines, you want to get your target to be as close as possible to the center of the blast. With careful positioning, this can result in some truly broken damage output that can take huge chunks off of a boss's life bar. At number 10, the Charge Dart. Calling this an upgrade to the Tranquilizer would be an understatement. The weapon pairs up wonderfully with any heavy hitter in your arsenal for complete and total dominance over the battlefield. Best of all, you don't even need to charge it for it to take effect, allowing you to pop out of cover and instantly lock down your target. You can then follow up with another attack or simply run past them. While the Charge Dart rifle doesn't do much damage on its own, it is your best friend when the odds are stacked against you. The only real drawbacks are that some enemies are immune to the stun, such as undead and bosses. and it has reportedly crashed the game for some people. Otherwise, if you're planning on tackling the game on hardcore, then don't sleep on this weapon. At number 9, the Flamethrower. I'm going to be upfront and say this weapon's range is abysmal for a flamethrower. Their real-life counterparts are fueled either by some mixture of hydrocarbons or exclusively napalm. But this thing looks more like it's spraying molten lead around with the way it drops to the ground, which would make the fuel tank monumentally heavy to carry. Despite the range issue, the flamethrower does not care about collision at all. It will pass right through enemies to deal damage. This also affects bosses with large weak points, allowing you to melt through their life bar in seconds. Sustained fire will rapidly deplete your fuel though, so make the most of it while it lasts. Next at number 8, the Riding Gun. Although it's only available for a brief section of the game, the weapon atop the Styracosaurus cannot be overlooked for its capacity to trivialize any challenge you face. It really makes you question just how in the world the city was overtaken so easily when they had this thing sitting right here inside the stable. There's just something about stomping around on the back of a living tank as you lay waste to the dinosaur army left wandering the war-torn streets. The original devs knew what they were doing when they made so many objects destructible in this area. They wanted to give first-time players a power fantasy like no game could at the time. It's a moment that'll bring a tear to your eye, to leave the big guy behind, hoping that someday you'll meet again. Next up at number 7, the Firestorm Cannon. Combine the pulse rifle and the minigun from Dinosaur Hunter, and you get this monster of a weapon. It's a welcome step up from the plasma rifle, as it forgoes the scope for a sustained fire rate that's sure to clear entire rooms before running empty. Thankfully, Hive of the Mantids is full of enemies that drop ammo for it frequently, keeping you well supplied for your trek through its confusing tunnels. Like its predecessors, you can't really go wrong with the Firestorm as a primary option. There are certainly better weapons, but Turok 2 went for a more conservative approach with its arsenal, limiting ammo to make it more balanced overall. As such, when the big guns go dry, the Firestorm Cannon has you covered. Now at number 6, the Shotgun. I'm not sure if a double-barreled pump-action coach gun even exists, but with the kind of weird tech found in Turok 2, it's not much of a stretch. Either way, we got ourselves a solid weapon for the early game that is handed to you right near an objective in Portavadia. This thing delivers a serious punch at close to mid-range, with sound effects not unlike the crack of a whip, and has 2 ammo types. Green shells can handle most of the heavy lifting, while explosive red shells are best for groups and the bigger threats. Even though we get an upgrade for it later in the game, I still prefer to swap to the shotgun to use green shells, as I find it performs a little better with that ammunition. Overall, as a classic staple in FPS games, I feel that Turok 2 did it justice. Now we're getting into the top 5 with the Mag 60. Similar to the assault rifle in Dinosaur Hunter, this upgrades your pistol to have a 3-round burst for more DPS. But where this gun comes out on top is its ability to make use of locational damage, making triple headshots absolutely devastating. It's because of this feature, along with its style, that the mag has affectionately earned the nickname Swag 60. Now, it's not going to beat out heavier weapons against bosses, but the Mag 60 has some reliable firepower for something that fits snugly in the palm of your hand.
I'm free.
Again at number 4, we have the Grenade Launcher. Well, it doesn't compare to the one we got in Dinosaur Hunter. The trade-off here is that it won't cause any self-damage brought about from the explosion. This allows you to get up close and personal without any worry of the grenades missing their mark due to the change in physics. Although the grenade launcher has a smaller ammo capacity and slower fire rate than its predecessor, it feels appropriately balanced for the role it plays in Turok 2. It's your go-to, heavy-hitting, get-shit-done kind of weapon, earning itself a high spot on the list. Next at number 3, the Cerebral Bore. Paying homage to the classic horror film series Phantasm, the concept of this weapon was not only seen in Turok 2, but also in Monolith's Blood 2. The Bore was utter trash in the original version, being slow to track on and having the frustrating tendency to bounce off of enemies if it made contact with anything but their head. However, Nightdive completely overhauled this to be a gruesome instrument of terror in the remaster. Though the travel speed of the boars can be slow, it's about the only thing to balance this odd contraption from being absolutely busted. The fire and forget nature of the cerebral boar makes it a perfect choice for dealing with problematic enemies as you duck into cover. Next at number 2, the Scorpion Launcher. Take the crudeness of the quad rocket launcher from Dinosaur Hunter, refine it, and you get a more sophisticated weapon capable of absurd levels of damage output. No longer are you limited to an unpredictable spiral of rockets and slow travel speeds. Now you can sit back and let this thing's tracking take care of the work for you, unleashing a volley of missiles at your foes. Even in situations where it would be overkill to use this, you are not required to stay on target for each shot. This allows you to set up for some impressive chain kills, even when enemies are nowhere near one another. To top it all off, you can enjoy everything the Scorpion Launcher has to offer without risk to your health, as there is no self-damage. Finally at number 1, at no surprise to anyone, we have the Shredder. Forget the shotgun. Give me a weapon that charges shells with kinetic energy to unleash a focused beam of pure destruction on anything foolish enough to stand in my way. The Shredder's true potential doesn't lie in direct hits, but in its ability to ricochet off surfaces for additional damage. It's the only gun in the entire game that rewards you for intentionally missing your target, offering up a truly dynamic playstyle in the hands of an experienced player. If it wasn't limited to 10 red shells, it would undoubtedly carry you single-handedly through every encounter as the rest of your arsenal collected dust. The Shredder doesn't just live up to its name, no, it is the undisputed king of the whole franchise. There we have it, aside from the few that we find in multiplayer which nobody cares about. That's all 24 weapons in Turok 2 Seeds of Evil, arranged from worst to best. Do you agree or disagree with the ranking? Discuss it down below in the comments. Join me next time where I'll be ranking the weapons of Turok 3 Shadow of Oblivion. If you've made it this far into the video, then I thank you for sticking around. I don't need to tell you how YouTube works, but please consider subscribing if you're new around here, leaving a like, or sharing with a friend. Making a video like this does take a lot of work to produce, so that kind of stuff really goes a long way to helping me out. I also stream nearly every day on both YouTube and Twitch, where I do speedruns or retro achievements. So if that's something you might be interested in, then head over to your platform of choice where you can catch me when I'm live. Until then, stay safe and comfy out there.